V-Union is the latest mechanic in the Pokemon trading card game, and we are kicking off our V-Union deck list strong by showing you guys my personal favourite V-Union, both in its artworks and attacks and abilities in the Pokemon TCG. Today's video is based on none other than my Mewtwo V-Union deck profile. Yo, what's up guys, Alien ESP here back with another video. Hope you're all doing well. But as I said, as you can see by the title and the thumbnail of this video, in today's video we're going with my Mewtwo V-Union deck profile. These V-Union cards are so interesting in their nature. 4 cards combining into one, and that one card being super powerful is so interesting to me. And yet another interesting mechanic Pokemon has implemented into the TCG, and we're kicking off strong with, in my personal opinion, the strongest, both out of the current 3, the other 2 being Greninja and Zacian, and the future one we know we're getting. We know we're at least getting one more V-Union in the form of Pikachu V-Union. We expect to see it around the time Celebration releases. Are you guys a fan of V-Union? I would love to know in the comments down below, and that is comment question of the day. I know, throwing this one out early in the intro phase of the video, so without further ado, let's get right into it, baby. And of course, it would not be Alien ESP culture if we did not show this deck in the cute deck box. We do this with all our decks, both past and present, and we have to show them off in the adorable deck box. So what do we have cooking up inside of this deck box today? In this deck box, we have none other than the 4-card piece itself, Mewtwo V-Union 4-card piece. I don't think that makes any sense, but I haven't thought of anything too catchy for the V-Unions yet. But hey, we still have another 3 to go. And I'm sure in the time span between all 4 of them, I'm sure we'll come up with some catchy name. So let's go with the main focus of this deck, Mewtwo V-Union, and instead of holding all 4 pieces together, let's just go over piece by piece by piece. So this is the head piece of Mewtwo V-Union. This contains its HP being 310. Okay, that's kind of average. I know it's not even special having 300 HP anymore. Honestly, crazy. It's around the average for V-Max Pokemon, and this is a 3 prize, even though you need 4 cards to make it. And the first attack we see is Super Regeneration for 2 Psychic Energy and 1 Colorless, and it does no damage, but it simply heals 200 damage from this Pokemon. Pretty cool, essentially locking out decks which do less than 200 damage, because if they're doing less, let's say 150, well, you can just heal 200 damage off yourself and then they're not doing anything to you at the end of the day. So pretty powerful right there. Onto the hand piece of Mewtwo V-Union, we can see the next attack being Union Gain. Union Gain is an attack all V-Unions have, but is tweaked a bit based off that card. This one reading, attach up to 2 Psychic Energy cards from your discard pile to this Pokemon. Pretty good at energy acceleration. All V-Unions have this, but of course the type of energy is different for that one. So if you're taking a look at, I don't know, Zacian V-Union, instead of Psychic Energy, it's Metal Energy, etc. Next up, to the foot and tail, we see our first ability both in this deck and on Mewtwo V-Union itself. This is none other than Photon Barrier. Prevent all effective damage from your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon. Damage is not an effect. Okay, pretty interesting. If your opponent is playing, I don't know, Dragapult VMAX, that deck is seeing a fair bit of play right now, rise in popularity, then they cannot place damage counters on you, because it says damage is not an effect. However, damage and damage counters are 2 separate things in the Pokemon TCG. As well as the big boy attack for 3 Psychic Energy and 1 colorless, Final Burn, 300 damage, pretty powerful right there, and it makes sense, a powerful move for Mewtwo, the Gen 1 Legendary itself. Next up, very interesting attack which caught my attention when these cards were first released, Psy-Splosion for 2 Psychic Energy and 1 colorless. Put 16 damage counters on your Pokemon, in your opponent's Pokemon any way you like. Super good for just finishing off Pokemon and just spreading damage in the first place. So many 1 prizes are seeing play right now, not 1 prize attackers they haven't seen play in what feels like ages now. Kind of upsetting to hear that, but hey, you know, you see the Sobble engines everywhere, you know, Flaffy is here and there with the Regieleki Rogue deck, but most importantly and noticeably, the Rayquaza VMAX. Yeah, this is so good, you know, allowing you to take multiple knockouts on 1 turn against your opponent. I don't know, Drizzile, Sobbles, Inteleons, Flaffy, Mareep the Sheep. So good for that damage spread. As well as that, we can see the weakness and resistance for this Pokemon. Weak to Dark, that is actually pretty relevant. You know, Single Strike Urshifu VMAX is seeing so much play now, and that has a tech in it in the form of Umbreon VMAX. An Umbreon VMAX attack doing 160 with weakness will indeed one-shot you, and that is without the modifier of the Single Strike energy, and the resistance of -30 does help you a bit. You know, Rapid Strike Urshifu and Single Strike Urshifu, you know, you do want to be taking that less damage, and that is always good. So the 4 pieces of Mewtwo V-Union are now up. But what are we using to tech Mewtwo V-Union with? You guys probably all saw this coming because it makes so much sense. Mewtwo V-Union being a psychic type allows it to abuse the ability of Underworld Door, as well as that Shadow Rider character that's being in this deck acts as an alternate attacker. The thing about Mewtwo V-Union, to get it in play, you need all 4 pieces in your discard pile, and you can only have 1 of each piece in your deck. So if you have prized 1, you are out of luck. However, with this engine, the Shadow Rider V and VMAX line in your deck, if you have prized 1 or maybe more pieces, you can still get the attacks rolling and possibly win the game, because Shadow Rider character mix in itself is so powerful. You know, I don't need to explain why this card is so good. We've done a full in-depth deck list analysis on this video, actually one of my most viewed videos, so thank you guys for that. It means so much. This card is honestly so good. You know, it's got everything you want. You know, a great attack, a built-in energy acceleration and draw ability. This is so good, and we've run 4 copies of that. And of course, if we're doing the VMAX, we need the V, so I'm sure all you guys predicted this as soon as I brought out the VMAXs, or hey, maybe you guys saw this coming before I even showed you guys this. We've run 4 copies of the Shadow Rider character V. Going off the set version, we'll get to the one of the promo in a second. Shadow Mist, pretty useful, 10 damage, 1 psychic energy, but during your opponent's next turn, they can't play any special energy or stadium cards. Pretty good, this slowing down both Rapid Strike Urshifu and a lot of other cards, which either use stadium cards or B use special energy. Very good. Now, what is the one of the promo here for? Essentially, this is here for the any of your matchups which do not allow VMAXs to attack. You will use this as an alternate attacker. Things, of course, like your Glaceon VMAX, as well as that Zamazenta. This allows you to hit so much harder, because realistically the set versions do not do. You know, Astral Barrage, you know, that 5 damage counter simply isn't good enough. However, Hollow Binding can 2-shot those Pokemon. You guys at home may be like, what, 2-shot? That's not good enough. Well, guess what? Those Pokemon, they're not going to be one-shotting you. Glaceon VMAX can't one-shot this card, and neither can Zamazenta V, and that's why that acts perfectly in those matchups. Next up, a card I'll definitely have to explain to you guys. You guys know Espeon's my favorite Pokemon, but I'm telling you guys, this card isn't just in here because Espeon's my favorite Pokemon. There's a legitimate reason to it, and it's not for Super Cyborg, and unlike some of the other Vs in this deck list, it is not for the VMAX. It's simply for its attack Zen Shot. This attack does 6 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Why is this good? Well, as I was showing you guys the Mewtwo V-Union card, all 4 pieces, one of those pieces did 300 damage. Now, in a lot of cases, 300 is so much damage. I mean, it is a load of damage at the end of the day, and it can take knockout on most things. However, there are a couple Pokemon in the format right now, most notably Eternatus and the bigger VMAXs, where 300 won't cut it. So Zen Shot is in there to snipe it. I know it says Pokemon V, but a VMAX counts as a Pokemon V. So if you've done a final burn on something, let's say Eternatus VMAX for example, and you just want to finish it off, you can Zen Shot snipe it, whether it be in the active or the bench, and that is why we have 1 copy of it. Next up, a card which has seen virtually no play until V-Unions came out, Galarian Articuno, probably the least played Galarian bird up till now, but what is it doing? Side Rate is not why it's in it. Confusion is cool, but status effects are not big in the TCG at all. It is for its ability Recontest to Chew. So you must discard 2 cards from your hand in order to use this ability, and once during your turn you may draw a card. This is so good. We have one of it in the deck because it allows you to discard 2 cards. This is good for getting those V-Unions in the bin, and hey, why not draw some cards whilst you're at it? Some of you guys maybe have the Minccino Cincino line to do that. It does a very similar thing, however that is a 1 prize and then a 2 prizer, but in the sense that if you are ever using the Shadow Rider character who wants to do your damage in the game, Shadow Rider can accelerate to this since it's a psychic type, and Cincino and Minccino aren't psychic types. so you cannot abuse Shadow Rider Calyx V-Max's Underworld Door ability with that, and that is why we have 1 copy of Galarian Articuno. Next up, Akara shouldn't need to explain Crobat V. It's in it for the ability. Don't want to stay too long on this card. Very reminiscent of Shaman EX from Wrong Skies, the only difference being Shaman EX you do multiple times during your turn, this being once a turn, but hey, that is why in here for the ability, drawing more cards. Don't want to spend a load of time on such an obvious card. Next up, a card which has seen loads of playing Psychic decks, most notably Shadow Rider, and it has a one-off in this deck. This is the Cruel Charge Galarian Articuno from Evolving Skies. When you play this Pokemon, throwing your hand onto your bench, you may attach up just 2 Psych Energy cards from your hand to this Pokemon. Super good getting just energy on the board, and if you're attacking with Shadow Rider Calyx V-Max with this deck, for whatever reason, maybe you've prized a V-Union or you're just having difficulties getting out, but we'll get to the ways you can get out in a second. You can use this to get more energy on the board, meaning your Shadow Riders are doing more damage. As well as that Psy Laser can be useful if you're ever coming against Decidueye. You know, this is the only non-rule box attacker we have in the deck, so this is very good for dealing with those Decidueye matchups. Onto the trainer cards now. A lot of these will be very obvious, so just like Crobat, we're not going to spend much time. 4 copies of Professor's Research, discard your hand, draw 7 for the consistency, and hey, there is a chance you have, let's say, a piece of V-Union or maybe multiple. You can get them in the bin ready to get your V-Union activated, and we have 4 copies of that for as much consistency as possible. On the lines of consistency, another supporter which is very consistent, seeing a lot of play right now, Marnie, but however, unlike Press Research, you do not discard the cards with it. You shuffle your hand, put it on the bottom of the deck. The user takes 5 and the opponent of whoever you takes 4. Very good for getting your hand out of a bad matchup, and hey, it also slows your opponent down at the same time. This is why that card is so good and so deadly. It advances your board state, giving you new fresh cards if you have a bad hand, and slows your opponent down at the same time, and that's why we have 2 copies of Marnie. Next up, a card which is also seen play like the other supporters we've shown so far, Boss's Order. Gusting is so powerful. Switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active Pokemon. Super good if you just want to get that finishing blow, or if your Pokemon has a Pokemon on the field, just want to get rid of it. This is super good for it. Gusting is always good, whether that be in the form of a supporter we see here, an ability like Umbreon VMAX, Lycanroc GX, or if you want to go really far back into the depths of time, Luxray GX. I mean, even hey, Pokemon Catch, which has a 50% chance to gust your opponent's Pokemon, saw a load of playing Gusting is so good, and that is why we have 3 copies of Boss's Order. Next up, a one of Peonia, another card that's just seen virtually no play, but I'll tell you guys why. Let's say you've prized one of your V-Union pieces. Well, using Peonia, you have a chance to get it out. Put up to 3 prize cards into your hand. Then for each prize card you put in your hand in this way, put a card from your hand to face down as a prize card. Maybe you want to up this to a 2 count so you can virtually see all 6 of your prize cards. This is very good, trying your hardest to get out one of those V-Union pieces if it is in your prize cards, because if it is, there's basically nothing you can do. That is it for the supporters. Moving to the item cards now, we have now done 4 copies of Quick Ball, discarding 1 card from your hand and getting out a basic Pokemon from your deck. Just gonna let you guys know, you cannot get out a V-Union piece with this. It does not count as a basic Pokemon, but however, you can still use to discard a copy of a V-Union piece. I mean, just getting out your attackers or whatever you need to get out, maybe it is a Crobat, is very good, and we have 4 copies of it, just like so many other decks in the format. Just like all other Psychic decks, we are also running 4 copies of Fog Crystal, essentially either acting as an 8th Quick Ball, or you can get out your Psychic Energy. Search your deck for a Psychic Energy card or a basic Psychic Pokemon, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle your deck. Super good consistency, whether you're using it for the Pokemon or the energy is good either way. And that's why we have 4 copies of it. Next up, a card that is also seeing so much play. I don't want to spend too much time on these cards, which are obvious picks. 3 copies of Evolution Incense. This can as well be used to get out the V-Union pieces with them not being evolved Pokemon, but you can use to get out your Shadow Rider VMAXs, the most notable cards and the only of Evolution Pokemon in this deck. They're good just to get them out, that consistency out in the day. You know, use this card, get out your VMAX, brings even more consistency on the table. table and giving your opponent an even harder time, because Shadow Rider Calyx VMAX is definitely a force to be reckoned with. Now, next up, a card which has seen no play until V-Union was here. If you told me that Familiar Bell, when it first released in Darkness Blades, would see play, I would laugh in your face. But hey, here I have, having a 2 copy of it in my deck. What does it read? Search your deck for a Pokemon, any stage, whether it be basic or evolved, with the same name as the Pokemon in your discard pile, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. Super good. You guys can probably see the synergy already. What you can do is, let's say you've already binned one of your V-Union pieces, well, use this to get out yet another V-Union piece from the deck. And that is very, very good. And then you want to discard it furthermore, because with this card, it doesn't automatically go to this card. It does go to your hand, but with so many ways to get it back in the bin, whether that be research or quick ball, so many outs to it. And that's why we have 2 copies of Familiar Bell. Next up, speaking of something, we have 2 copies of Switch, just pivoting in and out. You don't need high copies of Switch anymore with, you know, Alolan Raichu and Raichu GX rotating out. There is barely any special conditions going around in the format, so you do not need your high counts of Switch, and that is why we have 2 copies of it. Next up, another card which allows you to pivot in and out, Air Balloon. This is very good. Very good card. You know, lowering the retreat cost of your Pokemon by 2 is very, very good. Just allowing for pivoting in and out. Pivoting works very well with Shadow Rider Calyx VMAX, with you only being able to Underworld Door 2 Pokemon on the bench, which is, and it has to be Psychic, of course. This is very, very good one to get the card you're accelerating to onto the bench, then back into the active to attack, and that's why we have 2 copies of Air Balloon. Next up, the Stadium's most in here to counter Path to the Peak. Still seeing play here and there with a few decks, especially with Dragapult VMAX on the rise. I'll explain the Stadium choices. This is probably the obvious one you're seeing in every Shadow Rider deck list, allowing you to get your basic energies back from the discard into your hand. Makes sense with Shadow Rider. You don't want your energies in the deck or in the discard pile. You want them all on the field, so using this card to get them back just makes so much sense. So we have a 2 copy of that. But next up, a card I probably do have to explain to you guys would be none other than Old Cemetery. This is a very good one facing those dark type matchups. Unlike Shadow Rider Calyx VMAX, you do not have any cards which aren't weak to darkness. In most of your Shadow Rider decks, you do use Alcremie VMAX, which, unlike a lot of Psychic Pokemon, is weak to metal, since it is technically a fairy type. However, in this deck, you do not have everything, and also Pokemon or Psychic Pokemon in this deck are none of them weak to darkness. Crobat V isn't, but you can't attack with Crobat V in this deck. So this really does help when coming against those matchups where you have the type weakness. Just spraying that extra damage counters from my testing, my vigorous testing online, really does help, and that's why I have an additional 2/2 line of Old Cemetery. But hey, maybe you do not like the Old Cemetery, that is totally fine. Maybe you'll go for the 4/4 of Training Court. Next up, rounding up the deck, 13, I do believe, copies of Psychic Energy. Makes sense, you know, you just want so much Psychic Energy in the deck. You know, every Shadow Rider deck wants as much Psychic Energy as possible, and that is why we run 13 copies. So there you guys have it. That was my Mewtwo V-Union deck profile. I do believe this Mewtwo V-Union deck profile is so good. Very consistent, both getting the V-Unit into play, and if you do not get it into play, well, you do have the backup attackers in the form of Shadow Rider Calyx VMAX. And that is why I do believe Mewtwo V-Union is the best V-Union around, because if you do not manage to get it out, well, you still do have an out to winning that game, being Shadow Rider Calyx VMAX. Also, we will be opening up both the Greninja and Zacian V-Union boxes in the coming days, and just like this video, the video after, we do daily uploads if you are new. The video after will be a deck profile based off the one, so if tomorrow we open up the Zacian box, or the day after tomorrow, we'll then be doing the Zacian V-Union deck profile. Man, that Zacian V-Union deck is going to be Zacian heavy. I already have an idea in my head. Going to have 4 copies of Zacian V, the 4 pieces of V-Union. It's going to be bananas, honestly, and the same with Greninja. Which one do you want to see first? Vote down there in the comments below. I read every comment. If you have a question, leave it down there. I'll answer it to the best of my ability, as well as that suggestions. We always do viewer suggestions. You know, I've had so many viewers suggest video ideas, and we always do execute it, you know, whether that be you want to see a certain deck profile, a certain question answered in a more talking video, or if you want to see a certain product opened, whether that be brand new, older, Sun and Moon, XY, or even vintage, if enough of you guys want to see it, I will do it. Becoming a bit of a motto on the channel, not gonna lie, but it is true at the end of the day. Make sure to answer the comment question there being which out of the 4 V-Unions we currently know of is your favourite, Mewtwo being my favourite, both for the artwork and the ability. However, that Pikachu V-Union artwork is sick. But make sure to like and subscribe. The best thing to do for the channel. Hey, it is free. I've been Alien ESP. You guys have been the best, and I mean the best on YouTube. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.